So NIST's computer science is Bush, or computer story is Bush science. The parameters NIST originally considered realistic. They called them realistic. They discarded those for more severe parameters because they did not compare to observed events. They also will not release, as I understand, still will not release thousands of photographs and video clips of what really happened. They can then just say global collapse ensued, but there are a few other people with more expertise studying this sort of thing. What about the resistance of the floors below? If these floors each caused a hesitation of only half a second, it's been said, you know, there were 80 floors below, at least 80 floors, both of the buildings. There would have been 40 seconds extra needed. What about the observed squids? And by the way, remember that pile driving is not pancaking. So when Shyam Sundar goes on Popular Science, in the Popular Science magazine, it said those squibs come from pancaking of the floors. Well, the floors didn't collapse. What we have is a pile driving, crunch down, smash down theory. And I'd like to hear from him what he says about squibs from that perspective. What about the large pools of molten metal observed in the basement areas of both towers and World Trade Center 7? And what about the sulfur residue found on the steel? The NIST World Trade Center report is false. They did not explain why and how the buildings collapsed, and their investigation was deceptive and unscientific at every step. They reported findings that were in direct contradiction to their physical testing. They omitted or distorted many important facts, including the original design claims and John Skilling's analysis, resistance from the building structure below, the World Trade Center 1 antenna moving first, pools of molten metal lingering for weeks, numerous eyewitness testimonies about explosions, and sulfur residue on the steel. Researchers, again, people with more expertise than myself, call for examination of the demolition hypothesis, and I join them in that call. It's high time we start looking at this. Demolition squibs seen ejected from floors far beyond the impact zone. Everything pulverized. Molten metal found under rubble piles of all three buildings. Site cleaned up by controlled demolition ink. And many reports of explosions and flashes of light. Just to finish up here, I know that this report's not yet about World Trade Center 7. But World Trade Center 7 would have been the tallest building in 33 states. It collapsed in 6.6 seconds. And Larry Silverstein, the leaseholder for all three buildings, essentially admitted to demolishing the building. And remember now, FEMA said, because their new story probably will challenge this statement, the collapse was due primarily to fire rather than any impact damage from the collapsing towers. It takes weeks to plan and implement a controlled demolition. Right? If you haven't seen this, it's good to see. I understand that a representative of MSNBC would still needs to see this. And he's also said that if he was faced with the knowledge that all of us have been faced with now, that he would leave the country, he would run far away. But we're here to tell him that not everyone would run.
Notice how the penthouse on top falls first.
Yep.
I don't know if everybody here sees that.
Back on, please.
Thank you, and whoever would like to stay for questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't have an explanation. I don't have another outrageous conspiracy theory for you. I can only tell you that the one we've been given is false, and that is enough. That should be enough. Yeah. So you kind of implied that maybe what's in it for me? I don't have a book or a video or anything. I'm here because I would like to avoid my family and yours from joining the growing ranks of 9/11 families.
I have a similar question. I remember it was last fall when I read about your public statement about the steel's integrity, and then suddenly I heard that you lost your job because of this, and I wondered how much of this personal story you could share with us.
Well, I actually lost my job in November of 2004, and it was tough on my family, if that's what you're asking, and financially tough particularly. From Underwriters Laboratories. I was fired from Underwriters Laboratories.
For making this statement?
What kind of recourse do you have?
You're fired.
Are you done there?
Why we were just asking, everyone's asking, why did they say you were fired?
They noted a couple of things, mainly poor judgment. We'll see about that, okay?
That's fair.
I wanted to ask this question, and maybe specifically direct it to Professor Jones. We know a lot of this science has been done on the two towers, but what a lot of us need to know more about is what really happened in the Pentagon. We know that the new footage they released is not really new at all, and also there's the fact that the commercial jet broke through those 5 load-bearing walls of solid concrete, and whether it's possible for a jet to break through without the help of uranium tipped, that type of science. My question is that science going to be done, or any scientists going to be looking at the possibility of, a missile hitting the Pentagon?
The only comment I can make on that is you might have noticed that I said 2 of the engineers who gave us the Oklahoma City report gave us the Pentagon report. So I'm not sure what kind of independent investigation is currently going on, but that seems like a good way to go. Maybe the Scholars for Truth in the future will have some efforts along those lines. Stephen, do you?
In the Scholars Forum that we discussed this, the Pentagon has been a very divisive issue. What hit the Pentagon? The problem is we don't have a lot of data. And so our approach there has been to insist that the Pentagon, FBI, release these tapes we know they have. So they released another one a couple weeks ago, but it didn't show Flight 77 hitting the Pentagon. There's nothing. 757 did not appear, even though some glibly said it did. If you look at it, it's not there. So that doesn't mean they don't have. We just need more data, and we need to insist that they release the data. The point is they haven't released it, which is suspicious in itself.
I agree. Sir?
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Ryan, first of all. And then I was wondering, what do you think the next step for this movement is to bring this towards the public and maybe get some prosecutions?
That's a good question. What to do next? I know there are some people who are working on some next step plans. David Ray Griffin, Mike Berger, and others. I don't have a plan just yet. My plan is to help get the word out that the official story is false. So really I'd like to see the next steps be the end to the war on terrorism, first of all, and very hopefully prosecution of the people involved in giving us this false story.
Would you recommend an international tribunal or something within the United States?
If it was up to me, I would recommend an international tribunal, because this affects really everyone in the world due to the impact of the American economic and military force.